So I wanted to do a little bit of an extended video talking about how Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero reported that Kevin Colbert is going to be stepping down as general manager of the Pittsburgh Steelers after the 2022 NFL Draft. Now, he's been there, like I said, in a shorter video I uploaded, since 2000. He's been there for a long time, 22 seasons now. And during that time, he only has one losing season, a 6-10 year in 2003. So right before everything really came together with Ben Roethlisberger joining the team and everything like that. That's the only losing season during his entire time with the team. They made the playoffs 13 times during that span. They've been to 3 Super Bowls. They've won 2. So overall, a very successful tenure with Pittsburgh. In total, 225 wins, 124 losses, and 3 ties. So I should have calculated the win-loss percentage, but yeah, it's still a very, very successful career there. And obviously, since Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season, so Kevin Colbert's never had a losing one either during Tomlin's time as head coach. And the reason why he's stepping down now, you have to think about it. Ben Roethlisberger's leaving. It's kind of like the end of an era. Kevin Colbert kind of started his true legacy in Pittsburgh by adding guys like Troy Polamalu, Ben Roethlisberger to the team. And, now Troy's been retired for quite a while now. And with Ben walking out, it probably just feels like a good time for him to step back and focus on life maybe outside of football. He is about 65 years old, so right around that retiring age. Obviously, he could keep going if he wanted to. For football, we know about executives and stuff like that. The timeline for retirement isn't always the same as it is for other jobs. You see coaches coaching until their late 60s, into their 70s potentially, both at the NFL and collegiate level, not because they have to, not because they need the money, just because they want to. So, he doesn't have to retire, but he's at a point where maybe he just feels like it's time to go. And that could be a bit worrisome if you're Mike Tomlin, perhaps, because you got to promote someone internally or bring in a new GM. Hopefully, they promote someone internally, unless there's just this tremendous coaching candidate or general manager candidate out there they feel like would be a perfect fit for their organization. They have Omar Khan on deck. There might be someone to bring in there. He's with the organization right now. If you just promote him internally, kind of keep things steady as you go into this massive rebuilding process where you're going to be finding a new franchise quarterback for the first time in almost 20 years. So hopefully there's some stability there during that transition. Colbert has been good and bad in both in Pittsburgh. There have been years where people have called him the best general manager in the sport. And when I say people, I mean diehard Steelers fans who sometimes are blinded by their fandom a little bit. And there have been other times where it's like, what the heck is he doing? And that's both in the draft and through trades and stuff like that. Obviously, the trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick was tremendous. We would never have gotten someone as talented as Minkah, but the first round pick we traded to get him, that was a great move. Guys who are currently on the team who he drafted, who turned into tremendous players. Cameron Heyward, probably not going to be a Hall of Famer, but going to be darn close in terms of his accolades and production. TJ Watt could win Defensive Player of the Year this year, could break the sack record. You never know. He's going to be one of the best Pittsburgh Steelers defenders in history, which is saying quite a bit considering all those great players you have from the 70s, 80s, and even the 90s, and even the early 2000s in this franchise history. So Watt was a tremendous hit. Like I said, Ben was one of his earliest draft picks in terms of someone he brought in to really help this program. Najee Harris this year, Pat Freiermuth, who looks so good so far. Alex Highsmith is contributing fairly well. Chase Claypool's got the talent, but hasn't really put it all together yet. Deontay Johnson has really hit as a third-round pick. So there's been a lot of good in the Kevin Colbert era. He's done quite a lot for Pittsburgh, the trades, the draft. There's been some bad, though. And this is one of the reasons why I say he's not the best general manager in football, like some Steelers fans will say. Yeah, I just tend to disagree with that because he's got too many misses to be the best GM, in my opinion. Although every GM has misses, let's admit that. Historically, though, if we go back, look at everything that's gone on so far, drafting guys like Z Hood in the first round, going out and getting someone like Lima Swede, Jarvis Jones in the first round. Terrell Owens has turned into a fairly good player, but not worthy of a first-round selection. It just makes me wonder. Some of these guys, like some of these picks, looking back on, it's just so weird. Daniel Sepulveda in the 4th round, I think he was taken. That didn't make a lot of sense either. I know he was a great college player, but didn't turn out to be much of anything in the NFL. But there was a streak of like 1st-round picks where there was just hit over and over again. Early in the 2000s when he was first getting there, in 2001, Casey Hampton. Next year, Kendall Simmons, not really a good hit, not really a hit there. But then it's Troy Polamalu, he's a Hall of Famer. In 2003. 2004, Ben Rossberger, future Hall of Famer. 2003, Heath Miller. Not a Hall of Famer, but one of the most beloved Steelers of all time, and certainly a great productive player. 2007, Lawrence Timmons, and then Lamar Woodley right after him in the 2nd round. 2008, Rashad Mendenhall. There's been some debate over Mendenhall in terms of how good was he, how good wasn't he. He was a good player. I mean, was he worthy of a 1st-round pick? No, but most running backs aren't worthy of 1st-round picks. They get worn down too quickly. So, and that was a little bit of my concern with the Najee Harris pick, because Harris has been running like, he's gotten so many touches this year. It's a little worrisome. But Mendenhall in 2008, was a very solid player himself. And then you get into some of the questionable picks. You get Ziggy Hood in 2009. You can get over that. Because you get Maurkice Pouncey the next year. Guy's been a 1st-team All-Pro a couple of times. One of the best centers in Steelers history, which says a lot because we have 2 Hall of Fame centers in our repertoire. So, great pick there. Then Cameron Heyward in 2011, the only guy from that 2011 class for Pittsburgh that's still active. 2012, David DeCastro, another tremendous pick. A couple of 1st-team All-Pro selections under his belt. 2013, Jarvis Jones, that's a miss. 2014, Ryan Shazier. There you go. This is an All-Pro caliber player. Just unfortunately gets his career ended early because of a freaky injury that we hopefully don't have to see happen to anyone else in the sport. And Stephon Tuitt in the 2nd round. Tremendous player, just hasn't been right this year. Hasn't played. It's unfortunate. Hopefully he comes back next year and is in the right mental shape to play. Tree Archer in the 3rd round that year. We're going to ignore that one. That was not necessarily a good pick. Bud Dupree in the 1st round in 2015. 2015 was a awful class. Bud Dupree turned into a solid player once T.J. Watt arrived and gave him a lot of one-on-one opportunities. But before that, Bud Dupree was not doing anything. Now, I think Bud Dupree overall, it evened out. He was a solid 1st-round pick. Probably higher on the scale than Terrell Edmonds, but obviously lower than any guy you consider worth keeping around. So that was a bit of a disappointment. Sinquez Golson in the 2nd round never played. Sammy Coates in the 3rd round was off the team very quickly. Doran Grant never really played. Jesse James is probably the best player, or Anthony Chickalo, who were 5th and 6th round selections, were probably the best players from that draft class. So that was basically a awful draft class. And there were a couple of those in the mid-2000s. 2016, Artie Burns. Obviously, he's a bust. Sean Davis, a solid player, but not one we kept around long-term. Javon Hargrave, a really good player, but playing in Philadelphia now, did not stay around on the team. And that's basically it. Tyler Matakevich in the 7th round is probably the most successful player of that draft class outside of Hargrave. And then 2017 kind of revitalized Pittsburgh because we needed to have a really good draft class, and we did. T.J. Watt, Juju Smith-Schuster, Cameron Sutton, James Conner, and the later rounds don't really matter that much. But unfortunately, Watt, well, he's been tremendous. Juju Smith-Schuster hurt this year, heading to free agency next year. Cameron Sutton playing a lot of outside corner this year, even though he's probably the best suited as a slot. James Conner in Arizona. So while that was a tremendous draft class, it didn't stick around for very long. 2018, another bad draft class. Terrell Edmonds has been good. Terrell Edmonds is a starting caliber player, but he's not worth a 1st-round pick, and everyone knew it was reach at the time when they took him that early. James Washington hasn't really played that much. Mason Rudolph is a career backup. Okorafor is starting right now, but he's a backup caliber tackle. He's not very good, guys. He's not very good. And if you watch Steelers games, you know Chuck Okafor is not a very good starting tackle. Marcus Allen's actually been playing a little bit more as of late. Jalen Samuels is going to get cut eventually, or just leave in free agency if he's not already gone. He was bugging the heck out of me last year, I know. And then 2019, 2020, 2021, still a little too early to judge those guys. But Colbert did trade up to get Devin Bush, who's been disappointing so far. Although I got Deontay Johnson in the third round, who was tremendous, followed by a bunch of other guys who were disappointing. But, you give and you take. Some good, some bad. Kevin Dotson in the fourth round in 2020 was a really good hit, in my opinion, so far. So was Alex Highsmith in the third round and Chase Claypool in the second round. But we'll see how it all works out. That's just a brief draft history of Kevin Colbert. Colbert's been tremendous during his time in Pittsburgh. I don't know if he'll be a Hall of Famer or not. I really couldn't tell you because I haven't looked at the history of every general manager who made it to the Hall of Fame. I would have to look at that, look at the record, the number of Hall of Famers they drafted, so on and so forth. He's been a good general manager. He's been above average. I don't know if he's been great. So we'll see. He's been certainly one of the most consistent general managers over the times that he's been in the NFL because he's been there for so long. I think he'll certainly get looks for the Hall of Fame because he's a Steeler, because the Steelers were successful during his time there. I think he could get the boost and get into the Hall. But I think it's also going to be kind of up in the air to see how long it'll take him to get into that position. But for now, hopefully, cross your fingers, knock on wood, hope for a Pittsburgh win today. I'll talk to you guys all later when I'm more awake.